Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at what I think is the very first session at reInvent. Did anyone have any meetings before this? No? Okay, so this is the start. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you taking time early in the morning to join us here in Las Vegas. I'm Danielle Gorman. I'm on the Venture Capital Business Development team at AWS Startups, and I'm thrilled to be here with you all. And my team and I, we get the pleasure of working with top venture-backed startups as well as the VCs that invest in them. And we get to see a variety of companies from the earliest stages through IPO. So it's a very exciting journey to be on. And before I joined AWS 4 years ago, I worked as an investor at a fund in Los Angeles where I invested in early-stage enterprise and consumer companies. And I got to witness the representation problem from the very beginning when it comes to women getting backed by investors. We all know that the numbers aren't great and that only 2% of venture funding goes to women. And I believe the problem actually starts at the top, where only 11% of investors globally are GPs at funds run by women. So we need to change it from the start. We need to change the money that's going into the hands of founders, and we need to have more representation with the folks like you that are in this room today. And when I was at the fund that I was at, I saw this problem firsthand, and I sought to change that. And so I organized quarterly dinner series, community events, and gatherings, and I was able to increase our female founder deal flow by 30%, just by nature of bringing more women into the room with us and have them pitch to us. And so I hope that with gatherings such as this one, we can encourage more women to start building companies, to work at companies and be engineers, and promote STEM worldwide. So thank you all for being part of that journey. So I'd love to see a show of hands of who's in the room. How many of you are founders? Okay, got some founders. Any investors in the room? Some investors in the back, if you want to see them afterwards. Any developers or engineers? Okay, lots of engineers. So there's some incredible content at reInvent for you today. This is a gathering of over 60,000 people. And so there's so many connections that can be made throughout the course of these next few days. And this morning is the kickoff to our Women in AI track. And so we're going to start out with a panel this morning with some amazing founders. And then I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Lily, who's going to speak about an inspirational project that she did called the Dear Ella Project, which is a portrait series. And then just so you all know, on Thursday at 2:30 at the Expo Center, Lily and I are going to give a talk about how to overcome bias in the fundraising process. And this is a talk that we've given to thousands of founders. So we would love to have some of you join us. Please see us afterwards if you want to learn more about that. So let's get started. So I'm excited to have here Belinda, who is the COO and founder of Hubble IQ. Here's Belinda. And motivated to empower people to solve their tech challenges, Belinda co-founded Hubble IQ, a company that transforms IT support with AI-driven solutions. They address the inefficiencies of IT support by creating autonomous, proactive tools that help users resolve technical issues independently, boost productivity, and reduce costs. Drawing on her expertise in communications and IT managed services, as well as her early entrepreneurial experience running an import business in Zambia, Belinda brings a unique perspective shaped by her African heritage and global outlook. So thank you, Belinda.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we have Jessica, who is the CEO and co-founder of AudioShake. AudioShake is a sound-splitting AI technology that makes audio more editable, accessible, and useful, and is used by some of the world's largest media, speech, and tech companies. She spent over a decade at Google, where she sat on the company's management team, and her work has been published by the New York Times, Time, Wired, and elsewhere. Thank you, Jessica. And then last, we have Helen, the founder of EngFlow. Helen is the CEO and co-founder of EngFlow, a big code developer platform funded by Andreessen Horowitz, with a focus on build and test acceleration in a cloud-optimized, cost-effective way. She has been a dedicated open source community member, managed enterprise adoption of Bazel open source build systems at Google, and brought thousands of engineers together at worldwide build community meetups. Helen is a passionate advisor of developer experience strategies, building on her engineering leadership experience as the executive director at JP Morgan, CTO at PureIQ, and engineering manager at Google. Welcome, Helen. So I wanted to get started and ask each of you a question on what inspired you to build these companies. Like, what has it been like? Where did your journey start? So, Belinda, if you want to start.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. The journey really stems from being a remote worker most of my career. The process of getting tech support was always frustrating. I'm sure everybody can relate. You know, something happens and you have to open a ticket. It's a very manual process and time consuming. So, that was very frustrating for me. And then on the other side of it, I've worked in IT managed services, right? And I saw that whenever we were providing SaaS services, the SLA stopped with just the software. It didn't go beyond that, and users were left to fend for themselves. So we decided, Kevin and I, my co-founder, to really transform the IT support process and make it just much, much easier for everybody and less frustrating. That was the essence of it.
In my case, I was at Google, working for Google in Tokyo. And living in Tokyo, you do a lot of karaoke. And my co-founder was also there. And so we did a ton of karaoke, and we were always like, why can't you karaoke to like old punk and hip hop and all the songs you want? Why is it always like this sticky book with like, Oasis songs? And so we were like, wouldn't it be amazing if you could just rip the vocals off of everything and turn everything into karaoke? That was like an idea that we had 10 years ago. We had a ton of really bad ideas. We were also like, what if you could build a better burrito? What if you could do, right? So it's like, I don't want to pretend it was like this like golden moment. But then fast forward to when we were both back in the Bay Area, we saw some of the advances that were happening in deep learning, and we started to think, well, wait, what if you could do that? And not to start a karaoke company, but we started thinking, well, if you could split sound, and you could do it at scale, and you could organize it, label it, so forth in a way where you could work with it in a programming environment, how would that change how we work with sound? And that coincided with, I was still at Google then, but now out of the headquarters, and I think just itching to do something where I could work across a whole bunch of different areas. Like Google was a great experience, but I wanted to be able to have a more diversity of experiences. And so, yeah, that's how it happened.
Looking forward to trying that karaoke soon.
A terrible singer is the thing you will never hear me sing.
I look forward to it, though. I'm Helen, and I've actually started my career as a C++ software engineer in banking, and as part of that, I've been very accustomed to the process of building large-scale software for credit risk management, which included often running the process of builds and tests, although we really did have limited testing back in those days, relying on testing in production as much as possible. How many of you do that? Hopefully not as many. And the reason we did that is because the iteration of building and testing software was pretty costly. And so we had to rely on doing these end-of-day batches of running builds and tests overnight and coming in the morning and fixing errors and sometimes starting over. And so kind of fast forward many years later when I joined Google, I had the opportunity to work with this developer productivity team that built the new generation build system called Bazel. And what I've seen is that Bazel at Google has become this homogeneous foundation for building software fast and iteratively and very incrementally. So not waiting for 8-hour-long builds, but actually chaining your dependencies in such ways that you're able to release code much, much faster. And so to me, this was an interesting opportunity. Google open sourced Bazel, and I worked with many companies from SpaceX to Uber to many others across the industries, and BMW, for example. And there was this gap missing. At Google, Bazel open source build system is just the foundation to build developer productivity tools. But outside of Google, there was no opportunity for developers to build as iteratively and to distribute the process, the slow process in the cloud. And so what we've done, myself and my co-founder, who actually was a core engineer that built Bazel at Google, we left to create the platform for all developers. And we're seeing much more trends now that really the process of building models is also very, very complex. And we're expecting to bring the powerful developer distribution system across multiple cloud workers to all of you building models or building software at large scale.
Amazing, thank you. So now that we know what each of these founders have built, I want to get to how you did it. And so, we know that only 2% of venture funding goes to women. How did that impact your journey? Did you create a sense of community along the way? Did you have mentors that helped you when, fundraising is hard and then fundraising for women is even harder?
Yeah, fundraising is hard. Being a first-time founder, a person of color, it was not an easy journey. In the beginning, I just, created a whole list of VCs that I was reaching out to. I got a lot of no's. I had to change my strategy and be very intentional about who I was reaching out to. Who's going to look at me favorably, right? As a person of color, who's invested in women before? Who shares the same mission, right? And so I was very intentional in how I went about fundraising, creating a very custom curated list of VCs that I knew would be favorable to me. The other thing too is, I'm based in Silicon Valley. I was reaching out to a lot of VCs in the area and I got a lot of no's. I had to change my strategy really and go outside of Silicon Valley. There's a lot of VCs outside of Silicon Valley. And we were able to get funding from a VC that was based in Atlanta. And it takes just one, right, to lead, and then everybody else is going to come after that.
I think I had, no, it's not think. Like I had I think a big leg up in the sense that I was coming out of Google on the management team, was in the Valley. It was not hard to get to VCs, to get them to take meetings, all of that kind of stuff. The thing that but then what happened was they were like, you're working in sound, which means music, which means no money. And they were like, anything but this, and we would love to talk to you. And so it was an interesting experience because all the things that people say about warm intros and having all of that was incredibly easy in a way that it would not have been if I had done it 10 years earlier, if I hadn't been coming from Google. And so I was very, very lucky in that sense, but still was getting no's initially. And the thing I think that was a little bit crazy making was that you never, I don't know if you had this too, but you didn't necessarily always know why the no was there. Mm-hmm. Because they would always start the meeting, which if they're VCs, don't do this. They would start the meetings with, basically at this stage, we just invest in the founder. And then 30 minutes later, they're like, it's just a little early for us. So you're like, oh, so it's me. But you would do, I'd have that. There was a very legitimate concern. We were starting off in music. It's a really, really hard industry. It's controlled by 3 dominant players. It's not an obvious thing. The TAM is smaller than other areas. And we had visions for broader sound, but we were starting in music. So there was a lot of good reasons to get no's in a lot of ways. And yet at the same time, I would also get questions that would throw me do you have kids? How are you going to do this with kids? And that's the crazy making part is you're is the no coming from that? Is the no because all of a sudden I thought we were just having a normal conversation as 2 human beings and all of a sudden you're seeing something very different in front of you and that's informing the no? Or is it because I'm in this seemingly bad area? And so after those initial no's, we secured our lead. In parallel to the conversations we were having with institutional investors, I was talking to angels in the music and film industries, and I was so invigorated by those conversations because we were all coming from tech. None of us were coming from the entertainment industry at all. And the people were so excited about what we were building. that I decided I wasn't going to actually take any more VC meetings, and I was only going to do angels. And we ended up, like, we closed that then within like 2 weeks. It was such a interesting thing because in a lot of ways it went counter to a lot of the advice I had been given. And those investors ended up being so incredibly useful in terms of introductions and so forth. And then in subsequent rounds, it got much easier once there was revenue and all that kind of stuff. But the first time was, it like started with VC and ended more heavier on the angel side.
I usually say that I have a lot of friends and like had great mentors throughout my career, but no one has ever given me money. And so, so this is like, you really know who your friends are when you need a job or you need money. And so this has been really interesting to hear Jessica talk about warm intros. Yeah, I mean, of course, I've also started with my introductions through the network. Being in New York, it was essentially, I felt out of place because New York is well known for a variety of industries, just not developer productivity per se. And we've changed, like things have changed over time over the past 5 years. This was 5 years ago that we were looking, almost 5 years ago, we were looking to raise money. And I was noticing a lot of this a curiosity. But at the same time, we were, both myself and my co-founder, first-time founders. Yes, we worked at Google, but in our case, Google was actually detriment to investment because infrastructure, there's just like a lot of great ideas that Google creates for itself, but it's challenging to get them to work for the outside world. And so we were actually met with more skepticism as a result of that. So first-time founders, not quite in the area where investors and companies are. So I'm in New York and my co-founder is in Munich. So even harder. And so we didn't know how to pitch. Let's face it. Both of us worked in engineering for decades, and I've seen venture capital pitches from time to time as part of startup ecosystem, but really didn't know how to pitch. And so we actually noticed that our message was not resonating, and more importantly, no one was willing to fund us based on the idea or the fact that we are the two people that are building the company. And so we put all of that on hold after a couple of months, pulled some of our own money, hired a couple of engineers, and decided to build and start looking for our first customers. And then within a year and a half, basically we were self-funded and we got a few customers, some customers pretty significant like MassMobile, large e-commerce providers, and at that point, we felt that it's time to get to investors, but we were missing that Silicon Valley network. And so we've applied to the accelerator called Alchemist, and that has created a good network opportunity for us. And more importantly, as we met really great mentors through the accelerator, they helped us frame some of our pitching with the like concept. Investors really like analogies. So us pitching this new build infrastructure tooling that helps you accelerate your development wasn't resonating as well as the two words, which is big code, which and then the analogy to big data. So big code today is where big data was before snowflakes and Databricks of the ecosystem emerged. And so that helped get attention from investors, and still we weren't seeing as much interest because we had a lot of stuff on our slides that we were talking about in terms of what we're building, the product, the problem we're solving. And at some point, I basically snapped and said, you don't care what I say about what I say. You don't want to listen to me? Fine, listen to our customers. And so I replaced all text in our pitch deck with quotes from customers and prospective customers if we were in trial with them. And at the time, it was companies like Snap and BMW and multiple large companies, and that instantly got us the attention. So really having enough around the progress and traction helped us get that. And so we got our first term sheet, at which point I asked the head of Accelerator to connect us with the big guys. So I said, okay, we're ready for the big firms like Andreessen Horowitz, Bessemer, Accel, and we had really great experience pitching to all three of them. Things instantly resonated, and we got funding from Andreessen Horowitz. So that's a long story.
If I can add one thing on top of that too, which I think resonates with what you were saying. When we did our pre-seed, our lead precursor, who invest, side note, in a ton of women, so for anyone who is raising out there, Charles had said to me, why don't you actually take less and build the prototype? Because everyone around me, all of I came off the management team at Google at the same time as two of my peers, and they were both raising hundreds of millions of dollars for companies that don't exist anymore. And they're awesome people, but my point was just that was a psychological kind of whoa, what's going on that I can't even raise this tiny amount, and they're raising these huge amounts. And Charles was just raise a little bit to build the prototype. And so that's what we did. And so it was a very small amount of money, and it was the best advice we could have gotten, because it actually, having so little, forced us to make some really tough decisions early on. We couldn't hire the extra engineer here or the extra engineer there. And I think that's a piece of advice that I've never heard someone regret having to work with certain constraints and be more creative as a result.
And typically we just go for VC money. I think we have to realize that there's different types of money. Like you mentioned, angels, accelerator programs, grants, right? That will give you a little bit of money to create the prototype that you need. You don't have to go for VC money up until, and for women, generally speaking, we require more proof points for VCs to invest in us, right? You've heard of people getting funded with just an idea. For us, it's very different. They want to see customers. They want to see a product. So raising a little bit of money and then going out and raising VC money, I think is probably a better path than just going to VCs beforehand, because you're gonna get a lot of no's.
Yeah, and on that note, to actually make a plug for AWS, so two of you went through AWS accelerators. Belinda went through the Impact Accelerator, and then Jessica is part of our 2024 Gen AI Accelerator class. And you'll be pitching at the Shark Tank, right?
Unicorn Tank.
Unicorn Tank. So come see her pitch this week. And can you share a bit more on how AWS helped you with, whether it was the resources, the connections, how do accelerators such as the ones that AWS have help founders in that journey?
For us, AWS has been a cornerstone in our journey. I remember we had some money from some angels, family and friends, and we literally had $10,000 in the bank account when we ended up getting accepted into the AWS Impact Accelerator. I mean, it was just a lifeline that we needed. It really helped us gain enough money. I think the accelerator program was giving cloud credits and then also a grant, no equity. And this gave us really the ability to create our MVP and go out to market, but also it also gave us, the ability, the visibility that we needed, the network to investors, and the resources. We had access to engineers to help us build our prototype. Very, very instrumental.
On our side, so the accelerator, the AWS accelerator that we're in now, we've been around for 3.5 years. So we've already built pretty deeply, on top of AWS. The very start of AWS for us was just probably like most startups, which is you credit hop. And AWS gave us more credits, and guess what? We just kept building on AWS. Thank you, AWS. And so we'd already done quite a bit in terms of using different AWS tools. There is, I think, a lot of additional sort of tech support and so forth that comes through. For example, you're using EC2s and all of a sudden you want to be deploying in private clouds and you don't know anything about SageMaker. I think there's additional technical support. We'd already kind of gone through that process on our own, and AWS had already been independent of the accelerator, very helpful with that. I think what's been helpful to us has been just having additional points of contact that have helped us navigate everything from go-to-market through to different kinds of either tools or places that we could be that we hadn't thought about before. And I think it's also just nice to be part. It's not a traditional accelerator, incubator kind of thing where they're taking equity or anything like that. It really is just giving you a lot more support. And it's been cool to also get to be in a cohort with other startup founders that are some of them are dealing, particularly if it's AI, a lot of them are dealing with the same issues around scaling and so it's been useful.
So switching over to AI, can each of you speak about what are the trends that you're most excited about in the next few years, and how you see AI changing your industries that you operate in.
I'll start with developer infrastructure. The most skeptical people about applying AI to their day-to-day workflow are the ones writing code. And so, not surprising. And even though at this point, I think that there's enough data on the market saying that, yeah, code pilots are cool tools, but they work like a junior engineer. So that's a data point. Junior engineers still an efficiency saving that you're getting. And so the trends that we're seeing here, I'm on kind of working with our customers, and we work with some of the most innovative companies that specifically build with AI and also implement those tools. It's always interesting to see that these developer infrastructure teams are more skeptical about adopting AI technology, because in the world of infrastructure, correctness is a really, really important thing. And so a test either failed or passed, and it cannot have an opinion in the middle. And so the trends that we're seeing is that there's a lot of momentum in Copilot tools, all sorts of Copilot tools, from open source to commercial, from GitHub, SourceGraph, and so on. And they're gaining momentum. And on top of that, all these tools will create a lot of code. They will also create a lot of bad code. And so there's efforts that I've spoken with engineers at Uber recently that they're building, they're using AI to try to create tests so that bad code can get created, but then if you use AI to also create tests, then you can gate the quality of that code more effectively. And all of this will create even more amount of source code that needs to be built and needs to be loaded into your AWS servers or wherever else you're running your infrastructure. So we're focusing, like EnchFlow as a company is focusing on providing infrastructure for building that code more effectively by distributing it across cloud servers. And we're seeing the trends that more code means slower build times, and therefore the more you can distribute and parallelize your process of building and testing, the better.
Beyond what we do, I'm really excited about copilots. I'm like, I think yeah, like copilots are amazing. But also, I think creative tools that just open up the door, like as a brainstorming tools, those are very interesting to me. And then in terms of what we do, it's interesting because there's so much. Because we do a lot of work in media and the entertainment industry, there's so much controversy around generative AI that people sometimes forget that there's all these other kinds of AI that can help these industries right out of the gate to help them make them money or increase distribution or whatever it might be. And so that's been pretty exciting to be able to give people tools in these large media companies that they can use to start splitting sound for all kinds of different workflows, from like localization through to dialogue editing and all kinds of different things. On this speech, and I think the other thing that we're really excited about is we do a lot of work in speech, so separating overlapping speakers, disentangling, the uh-huhs and yahs and laughs, so that you can actually work and teach computers how human conversation works. And I think as machines have to deal with audio increasingly as an input and an output, that's going to become pretty important work. So we're pretty excited about that.
Our focus is really transforming, using AI to transform the IT support process and how IT handles tech support. We focus on making IT support more proactive before it causes a lot of disruption. So I see a lot of proactive IT support, really identifying IT issues before they cause disruption. And then I also see self-healing. Right now we have an autonomous IT support agent, but it still requires people it's self-service IT support. It guides people through IT self-service resolution, and they have to take steps. It guides them through IT resolution. But then what I see is self-healing. Not only will we be able to proactively identify IT issues, but AI will be able to actually take action. Think, there's an IT problem. It says, okay, a restart of a computer will actually solve the issue. It won't require humans to actually, take that action. It will do that by itself. So self-healing IT support.
And also, just to go a bit deeper, Belinda, you had an amazing AI for good story too. So there is like the good side of AI, where we don't need to talk about the dark side. But how have you used AI for good?
Absolutely. We helped improve the infrastructure. We are helping improve the infrastructure in the city of Oakland. Over the last few years, the flatlands of Oakland, a lot of residents there were complaining that they had poor connectivity, but it was very hard for them to prove. They engaged with a nonprofit called Oakland Undivided to try and prove the problem. It was very manual. Over 2 years, they were only able to collect 200 data points. They came to us. One of the foundations of what we do is we look at internet connectivity performance, from the cloud all the way to where, the user is sitting. So we were able to deploy our software on student devices, Oakland Unified, and we were able to map out the entire city of Oakland and identify broadband performance gaps within the city. And this data, and we used obviously AI to analyze this data. This data was used to apply for grants, which usually cities that are considered covered by connectivity, they don't have access to this money. Without data, they were able to prove the broadband gaps within Oakland, and they won $15 million to improve internet infrastructure in the flatlands.
Amazing. So unfortunately, we only have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Time has really passed by quickly. So just to close it out, what are your goals for reInvent? Who are you hoping to meet here, and why are you here, other than this amazing panel?
Well, that's a start. This amazing panel. Thank you for the opportunity. I was contemplating if I should or should not come, so this gave me an extra amazing reason to be here. I'm actually excited to mostly meet people here and specifically meet partners, meet future customers, meet our existing customers, and do some hiring. We're looking for technical account executives, and so I figured a place like this will be an awesome opportunity.
We're excited, well, terrified, to pitch in Unicorn Tank. I actually was watching a zombie show yesterday because I was just like, even if it's rough, like no one's gonna eat your face. So anyway, come please and cheer. There's 3 of us, women, female founders in there, so that's kind of exciting. I love how I'm like excited about 3, but still, 3 out of 8, that's better than 2%. That, and then similarly, we're looking for back-end engineers. If anyone loves Kubernetes, please come find me.
We are officially launching our autonomous IT support agent, and I'm actually being showcased in the Ella project. Lily's going to talk about that. There's going to be a QR code on the portrait. Please scan it so you can try it out on your own. We're very, very excited about it. So think about having an IT agent that's available to you, 24/7, regardless of where you are. It can detect and understand your digital environment that is different from another person and give you tailored help. So please check it out. I'm looking to meet a lot of IT heads so we can help relieve the burden of IT support. And also investors, we're fundraising, so please reach out to me.
Well, thank you all so much. Please come talk to these incredible founders while they're still here. Lily, do you want to come up and share the Dear Ella project?
Hi, everyone.
My name is Lily Zhu. I am part of a very special team at AWS called the Underrepresented Founder Startup Team. So my role is dedicated to support and create programs to support diverse founders, including women, Black, Latinx, LGBTQIA+, and other underrepresented founders. I was a former founder myself. And back in 2014, without revealing my age, back in 2014, it was actually really, really hard for me as a founder to even find women founder communities to be a part of. And so for me, being in a position now to be able to provide resources to support more diverse founders makes my job really rewarding. So I'm excited to reveal a new project that's really meaningful to me called the Dear Ella Project. And I know it's kind of hard to read, but we will put it on the back later on. But this is Ella. She's 4 years old. She's my daughter. Yeah. And she's been her name when she was born. I named her Ella because Ella means her in Spanish and light in German. And when I created this project, and it's for her actually because she's been part of a lot of my Women Founder events. And after all the events, she'll create little gifts to give to all the women founders in the room. And then the last event, she got some glow sticks and put a lot of stickers on it, inspirational quotes. And then the message was, "Thank you for lighting up my future. Thank you for building for my future." And so we gave them all out, and then the response was really touching. A lot of the founders actually wrote her letters and saying, thank you for reminding me to keep building. And I found the message to be really touching. So that inspired me to create this project, and Danielle has been a huge help in supporting. So my own letter to her is, "Dear Ella, you're only 4 years old right now, and only 2% of venture funding goes to women. By the time when you turn 18, if you decide to become a founder, I would want to make sure that there's equal access to funding. And to pave the road for your future, I'm introducing you to 18 women founder role models who are paving road for your future in generations to come." So today we're celebrating 18 incredible women that are part of this project. I found some award-winning photographers who travel the world, and they're able to make time to take 18 portraits on the left, but they will be huge portraits that are beautiful. It's going to be displayed in 2 areas. One is at the All Builders Welcome Lounge in the expo, and the second place is on the 2nd floor of the Tao. And Ella and her cousins also designed a small gift. It's a token. It's called a pocket hug. It's hard to read, but you'll get one if you come to the All Builders Lounge area at the expo starting at 4 p.m., and we'll be giving them out. And the pocket hug is she said, to put in your pocket to remind you that you're awesome and you're doing great. And so there's a little letter from her. And or if you're not a woman founder, you can give it to a woman founder, or you can give it to anybody who's building to remind them that they're doing awesome. And at the back, there's a QR code. So if you have a woman founder to nominate for the next series, please go on the website to nominate somebody. Yeah, anything to add there? No? Okay. Well, thank you, and come find us at the All Builders Welcome Lounge.
Thank you so much.